The sun had been brutal that day, the kind that baked the earth until it cracked and bled dust into the air. Silver Bluff sat in a valley between hills that offered no shade, no mercy, just rock and scrub brush and the occasional vulture circling something dead. It wasn't a town people came to on purpose. It was a place you ended up when everywhere else had spit you out. She appeared on the eastern road just after noon. At first, she was just a shape in the heat shimmer, something that might have been a trick of exhausted eyes. But as she came closer, limping, dragging one leg behind her like it didn't quite belong to her anymore, people started to notice. Not because they cared, because she was wrong. Her dress had been blue once, maybe. Now it was the color of old blood and dirt, torn at the shoulder so badly that fabric hung in strips. Her hair was matted to her skull, dark with sweat or worse. And her face. Her face was a mess of purple and yellow bruises, one eye swollen nearly shut, her lips split and crusted over. She walked like she'd forgotten how. Jacob Finch was the first to see her up close. He'd been loading grain sacks onto his wagon outside Mercer's general store when she stumbled past, close enough that he could smell her, sweat, and something sour, something wrong. He stopped mid-lift, staring. Jesus, he muttered. She didn't look at him, didn't seem to see him at all, just kept moving, one foot dragging, the other barely supporting her weight. Her hands were clenched at her sides, nails broken, knuckles scraped raw. "Hey," Jacob called after her. "You need—" She didn't stop. He didn't follow. By the time she reached the center of town, a small crowd had gathered. Not to help, to watch. People stood in doorways, leaned against porch rails, whispered behind their hands. No one approached. Sheriff Darius Cole was sitting outside his office, boots propped on the railing, a cigarette burning between his fingers. He watched her with the same detached interest he might give a stray dog. When she finally stopped in front of him, swaying, barely upright, he took a long drag and exhaled smoke through his nose. "You lost?" he asked. She didn't answer, didn't even look at him. Her good eye was fixed on something in the distance, something only she could see. Cole leaned forward, boots hitting the wooden planks with a dull thud. "I asked you a question." Still nothing. He stood, flicking the cigarette into the dirt. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with a face that had seen enough violence to stop caring about it. He stepped closer, close enough to see the tremor in her hands, the way her breathing came shallow and fast. "What's your name?" Her lips parted. For a second it looked like she might speak. Then she closed her mouth again, jaw tight. Cole's eyes narrowed. "You deaf? Mute? Or just stupid?" Someone in the crowd laughed. A woman's voice, sharp and cruel. The stranger's head turned slightly, just enough to glance at the crowd. Her expression didn't change. No fear, no anger, nothing. Just that same blank, distant stare. Cole grabbed her arm, not gently. She flinched, pulling back instinctively, but he held on. "I don't know what you're running from," he said quietly, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "And I don't care. But you don't just walk into my town looking like something dragged out of a grave and expect—" She jerked free. It wasn't forceful, wasn't aggressive, just a sudden, desperate twist of her body. Cole let go, more surprised than anything. They stood there, staring at each other. The crowd had gone quiet now, waiting. "Get her out of here," someone muttered. "Probably diseased," another voice added. Cole spat into the dirt. "You got somewhere to go?" She didn't answer. "Figured." He turned back toward his office. "There's a church 2 streets over. Reverend Harper might take pity on you, or he might not. Either way, you're not my problem." He disappeared inside, the door slamming behind him. The crowd dispersed slowly, people drifting back to whatever small lives they'd been living before she interrupted. Within minutes, the street was empty again except for her, standing in the center of town like a ghost no one wanted to acknowledge. She started walking again. The church was small, wooden, leaning slightly to one side like it had given up on standing straight. The door was open and she could hear singing inside, thin, reedy voices struggling through a hymn. She stepped inside. The singing stopped. Reverend Harper stood at the front of the room, hands raised mid-gesture, his mouth open in surprise. The congregation, maybe 15 people scattered across the pews, turned to stare. "Can I—" Harper cleared his throat. "Can I help you, miss?" She didn't move, didn't speak. Harper was a small man, soft around the middle, with kind eyes that looked like they'd seen too much sadness. He stepped down from the pulpit, approaching her slowly, like she might bolt. "Are you hurt?" he asked gently. Her eye, the one that could still open, shifted to him. "Do you need a doctor?" Nothing. Harper glanced back at his congregation. A few of them were whispering now, heads close together. One woman clutched her Bible tighter, like the stranger might try to steal it. "I'm afraid we don't have much here," Harper said, his voice apologetic. "But if you need food or—" "She's trouble," a voice interrupted. An older woman in the front pew, face pinched and hard. "Look at her. She's been in a fight, or worse." "Martha, I'm not wrong, Reverend. You let her stay, and whatever she's running from will follow her here." Harper looked back at the stranger. Her expression hadn't changed. She didn't argue, didn't defend herself, just stood there, silent and still. "I'm sorry," Harper said quietly. "I truly am. But Martha's right. We don't have the resources to—" The stranger turned and walked out. Harper called after her, but she didn't stop. What? She tried the boarding house next. The owner, a heavy-set woman named Mrs. Calloway, took one look at her and shook her head. "No rooms." "Please," the stranger whispered. It was the first word she'd spoken since arriving, and it came out broken, barely audible. Mrs. Calloway's face softened for half a second. Then she shut the door. The saloon wouldn't let her in. The blacksmith told her to move along before she scared his customers. The doctor's office was closed, a note on the door saying he was out tending to someone on a ranch 10 miles south. By nightfall, she had nowhere to go. She found herself behind Mercer's General Store, in the narrow alley where they stacked empty crates and barrels. It smelled like rotting vegetables and piss, but it was out of sight, and that was something. She sat down against the wall, pulling her knees to her chest. The adrenaline that had kept her moving all day was finally draining away, leaving nothing but exhaustion and pain. Every part of her hurt. Her ribs ached when she breathed, her leg throbbed, her face felt like it was made of broken glass. She closed her eyes. Sleep didn't come, just the cold. Sometime after midnight, she heard voices. "Did you see her?" "Yeah, creepy as hell." "You think she's still around?" Footsteps. Close. She opened her eyes. 3 men stood at the mouth of the alley, silhouetted against the faint light from the street. They were young, drunk, looking for entertainment. "There she is," one of them said, grinning. She didn't move. They walked closer. "What's the matter?" the tallest one asked, crouching down in front of her. His breath reeked of whiskey. "Cat got your tongue?" She stared at him. "We just want to talk," another one said, laughing. "Maybe see if you need some help." The tall one reached out, fingers brushing her hair. She grabbed his wrist. It wasn't a strong grip. She didn't have the strength for that. But it was sudden enough to surprise him. He jerked back, stumbling, and his friends laughed harder. "Feisty," one of them said. The tall one's expression darkened. He stood, rubbing his wrist. "You think you're tough?" She didn't answer. He kicked her, not hard, just enough to make a point. His boot caught her in the ribs, and she gasped, curling inward. "That's what I thought." He drew his foot back again. A hand caught his ankle mid-swing. The tall man froze, looking down, then up. Rowan Hale stood behind him, silent as a shadow. He was a big man, broad-shouldered and rough-edged, with a face carved out of stone and scars. His hair was long, tied back, and his eyes were the kind of cold that made people step away without thinking. He didn't say a word, just held the man's ankle, unmoving. "Let go," the tall man said, trying to sound confident. Rowan twisted. The man yelped, stumbling forward, catching himself on the wall. His friends backed up immediately, hands raised. "We weren't—" Rowan looked at them. That was all it took. They turned and ran. The tall man scrambled after them, limping, cursing under his breath. Rowan stood there for a moment, staring down at the stranger. She hadn't moved, still curled against the wall, breathing shallow and fast. He crouched down, keeping his distance. "You hurt bad?" he asked. His voice was low, rough from disuse. She didn't answer. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Can you walk?" Still nothing. Rowan stood, glancing down the alley, then back at her. He looked like he was having an argument with himself, one he was losing. "Hell," he muttered. He bent down and scooped her up. She was lighter than he expected, all bones and bruises. She stiffened in his arms but didn't fight. "Relax," he said. "I'm not them." She didn't relax, but she didn't struggle either. Rowan carried her out of the alley and into the dark streets of Silver Bluff. No one saw them leave. No one cared enough to look. His cabin was an hour's ride into the hills, hidden among trees and rock formations that kept it invisible from the valley below. It was small, rough-built, more shelter than home. One room, a stone fireplace, a single bed in the corner. Everything else was minimal: a table, 2 chairs, shelves lined with supplies. He set her down on the bed. She sat there, staring at the floor, her hands folded in her lap. Rowan lit a lantern, the warm glow pushing back the darkness. He moved around the cabin with practiced efficiency, pulling out a basin, filling it with water from a bucket, grabbing a clean cloth from a shelf. He set the basin on the table and pulled one of the chairs over to the bed. "I'm going to clean those cuts," he said. "You can fight me if you want, but you'll lose." She didn't fight. He worked in silence, dabbing at the dried blood on her face, careful around the swelling. She flinched when he touched her split lip, but she didn't pull away. "You got a name?" he asked after a while. No answer. "Fair enough." He finished with her face and moved to her hands, cleaning the scrapes on her knuckles. Her fingers were small, delicate, but the nails were broken like she'd clawed at something, or someone. "You don't have to tell me what happened," Rowan said quietly, "but if someone's looking for you, I need to know." She looked at him then, really looked. Her good eye was dark, almost black in the lamplight, and there was something in it, something that wasn't fear or gratitude or anything he could name. "I don't know," she whispered. Rowan frowned. "You don't know what?" "I don't know who I am." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and strange. Rowan leaned back, studying her. "You don't remember?" "I remember. Pieces. Pain. Running. But before that," she shook her head. "Nothing." He didn't say anything for a long time, just sat there, turning that over in his mind. "All right," he finally said. "Then we'll figure it out." She blinked. "Why?" "Because you're here now," Rowan said simply. "And I don't leave people to die in alleys." He stood, gathering the basin and cloth. "You can have the bed. I'll sleep by the fire." "I don't—" "It's not a discussion." He turned away, busying himself with banking the fire, spreading out a blanket on the floor. The stranger sat on the bed, watching him. For the first time since she'd walked into Silver Bluff, something shifted in her chest. Not trust. Not yet. But something close. She lay down, her body screaming in protest, and closed her eyes. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt almost safe. Morning came cold and gray. Rowan woke before dawn, the way he always did. He stoked the fire, put coffee on to boil, and checked the stranger. She was still asleep, curled on her side, her breathing steady. He stepped outside. The air was sharp, biting, carrying the smell of pine and earth. His horse, a big roan gelding, stood tied near a lean-to, snorting softly. Rowan patted its neck absently, his mind elsewhere. He'd known this was a mistake the moment he'd picked her up. Getting involved with people, especially people in trouble, was something he'd sworn off years ago. It never ended well. It always cost more than you planned to give. But he'd looked at her, beaten and alone in that alley, and something in him had broken. Or maybe it had already been broken. Maybe this was just another crack in a foundation that had been crumbling for a long time. He heard movement inside. When he walked back in, she was sitting up, looking around like she wasn't sure where she was. "Coffee?" Rowan asked, pouring 2 cups. She nodded slowly. He handed her one. She wrapped both hands around it, soaking in the warmth. They sat in silence for a while, drinking. Outside, birds started to sing, tentative and distant. "What happens now?" she asked eventually. Rowan shrugged. "You rest, heal, then we see." "See what?" "If anyone comes looking for you, if your memory comes back, if—" He stopped, shaking his head. "I don't know. We take it one day at a time." She stared into her coffee. "You don't know me. I could be dangerous." "You could be," Rowan agreed, "but I doubt it." "Why?" "Because dangerous people don't end up half dead in alleys. They're the ones who put other people there. She didn't have an answer for that. Movin'. Rowan stood, setting his cup down. There's bread and dried meat in the cabinet. Help yourself. I've got work to do outside. You need anything? Just yell. He grabbed his coat and headed for the door. Rowan. He stopped, surprised. He hadn't told her his name. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. Thank you. He nodded once and left. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Rowan worked, chopping wood, mending fences, hunting. She stayed inside mostly, moving slowly, testing the limits of her battered body. He didn't push her to talk, didn't ask questions she couldn't answer. At first, there was only silence between them. Not comfortable, but not hostile either. Just the quiet of two people who didn't know what to say. But slowly, things shifted. She started helping. Small things at first, washing dishes, sweeping the floor, folding blankets. Then bigger things. She learned to tend the fire, to cook simple meals, to mend torn clothes. Rowan didn't ask her to. She just did it. One evening, about a week after she'd arrived, he came in to find the cabin warm, the smell of stew filling the air. She'd made dinner. He stopped in the doorway staring. Is it bad? She asked, suddenly uncertain. No, Rowan said quietly. It's good. They ate together. And for the first time, the silence felt less like distance and more like peace. But peace in Silver Bluff was always temporary. Rumors had a way of spreading in small towns, and Rowan's appearance in the alley hadn't gone unnoticed. People talked. They always did. Sheriff Cole heard the whispers. Rowan Hale, the mountain hermit, the man who'd lost everything and disappeared into the hills, the man people feared without quite knowing why. And now he had a woman. Cole didn't like it, didn't like not knowing what was happening in his jurisdiction. So one cold morning, 2 weeks after the stranger had arrived, he saddled his horse and rode into the hills. He brought 2 deputies with him, just in case. Rowan saw them coming from a distance. 3 riders, moving slow, deliberate. He recognized Cole's broad frame, the way he sat his horse like he owned the world. Rowan set down the axe he'd been using and walked to the cabin. The stranger was inside, stirring something on the stove. She looked up when he entered, saw his expression, and went still. We've got company, Rowan said. She set the spoon down. Who? Law. Her face went pale. They're here for me. Maybe. Maybe not. Rowan crossed to a shelf, pulled down a rifle, checked it. Either way, you stay inside. Don't come out unless I say. Rowan, stay. Inside. He stepped out onto the porch just as Cole and his men rode into the clearing. Cole dismounted, his eyes scanning the cabin, the surroundings. His deputies stayed on their horses, hands resting near their guns. Rowan, Cole said, his tone casual but edged. Been a while. Not long enough, Rowan replied. Cole smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Heard you had some excitement in town a couple weeks back. Depends on your definition of excitement. Heard you took something that didn't belong to you. Rowan's jaw tightened. She's not a thing. So she is here. Cole's smile widened. Mind if I talk to her? Yeah, I do. The 2 men stared at each other. The deputies shifted in their saddles, nervous. Look, Cole said, his voice hardening. I don't care what you do up here, Hale. You want to live like a hermit, that's your business. But when someone shows up in my town beaten to hell, no name, no story, that becomes my business. She's not hurting anyone. You don't know that. You don't know anything about her. I know enough. Cole's hand moved toward his gun. Just a fraction. Rowan's rifle came up faster. The deputies drew their weapons. For a long, tense moment, no one moved. Then the cabin door opened. The stranger stepped out. Don't, Rowan said sharply. She ignored him, walking slowly to the edge of the porch. She looked different now, still bruised, still thin, but stronger. There was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Cole stared at her. Do you know who you are? No, she said quietly. Do you want to find out? She hesitated, then, no. Cole frowned. There's a man in Silver Bluff, Judge Harlan Cross. He's been asking about a missing woman. Says his daughter was taken from their home 3 weeks ago. Says she was beaten, dragged off by men he'd put in prison. The stranger didn't react. He's offering a reward, Cole continued. $500 to whoever brings her back. She's not his daughter, Rowan said flatly. How do you know? Because she doesn't want to go. Cole's eyes narrowed. That's not how this works, Hale. If she's who he says she is, then he can come up here and ask her himself. Rowan interrupted. But you're not taking her anywhere. Cole's hand tightened on his gun. You're making a mistake. Wouldn't be my first. For a moment, it looked like Cole might push it, might try to take her by force, but then he saw the look in Rowan's eyes, cold, certain, willing to die on this hill. Cole holstered his gun. This isn't over, he said. Yeah, Rowan replied. It is. Cole and his deputies mounted up, turning their horses. As they rode away, Cole called back over his shoulder. Judge Cross is a powerful man, Hale. You really want to make an enemy of him? Rowan didn't answer. When they were gone, the stranger turned to him. Why did you do that? Rowan lowered the rifle, suddenly exhausted. Because it's what's right. You don't even know me. No, he admitted. But I know men like Cole, and I know men like this Judge Cross, and I know what happens when they decide they own someone. She looked at him for a long moment, then softly, I don't think I'm his daughter. I know. But someone's looking for me. Probably. And they'll come back. Rowan met her eyes. Let them. They stood there on the porch, the wind moving through the trees, carrying the smell of winter. Neither of them moved. Neither of them looked away. And for the first time since this had started, Rowan realized he wasn't just protecting a stranger. He was protecting something that mattered. Bassa. That night, they sat by the fire. She was quiet, staring into the flames. You could leave, Rowan said eventually. Head west. Start over somewhere no one knows you. Could I? She asked. Or would they just find me again? He didn't have an answer. I'm tired of running, she said quietly. I don't even know what I'm running from, but I'm tired of it. Rowan nodded. He understood that. What about you? She asked, turning to look at him. Why do you live up here, alone? His expression closed off. That's not a conversation for tonight. Will it ever be? He didn't answer. She went back to staring at the fire, but after a moment she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I think I had a family once. I don't know why I think that. I just do. I can almost feel it, like a shadow of something real. Rowan looked at her. What happened to them? I don't know. Her voice cracked. I don't know if they're looking for me, or if they're glad I'm gone, or if they're even alive. She wiped at her eyes, angry at the tears. Rowan stood, walked to the shelf, and pulled down a bottle of whiskey. He poured 2 glasses, handed her one. To not knowing, he said. She took the glass. To surviving anyway. They drank. And outside, in the dark hills beyond the cabin, something moved. Watching. Waiting. The whiskey burned going down, but it dulled the edges of things that needed dulling. The stranger set her empty glass on the table and pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. The fire had burned low, casting shadows that danced across the cabin walls like restless spirits. Rowan refilled both glasses without asking. You felt it too, she said. Not a question. He nodded. Someone's been watching the cabin for the past 2 days, stays back in the tree line, moves when I move. Why didn't you say anything? What would it change? He took a drink. They haven't made a move yet. When they do, I'll handle it. She studied him in the firelight, the scars on his hands, the way he held himself, always ready, always expecting the worst. You've done this before. Done what? Waited for bad things to come. Rowan's jaw tightened. Yeah, I have. She wanted to ask more, but something in his expression stopped her. Instead, she stood and walked to the small window, peering out into the darkness. Nothing but trees and shadows. I should leave, she said quietly, before this gets worse. Where would you go? Anywhere. It doesn't matter. It matters. Rowan set his glass down harder than he meant to. You go out there alone, with no name, no money, no memory, you'll end up dead or worse within a week. Better than getting you killed. I'm not that easy to kill. She turned to face him. Everyone is. You just haven't met the right person yet. The words hung between them, sharp and true. Rowan looked at her, really looked, and saw something he recognized, the kind of exhaustion that came from surviving too many things that should have killed you. Tell me about the family you remember, he said, changing the subject. She hesitated, then returned to her seat. It's not much. Just feelings, mostly. Warmth, the smell of bread baking, a woman's laugh. A man's voice, deep and steady. She closed her eyes. And a sense that I failed them somehow. Failed them how? I don't know. But the feeling's there, like a weight in my chest. She opened her eyes. Maybe I did something terrible. Maybe that's why I can't remember. Or maybe someone made you forget, Rowan said. Why would anyone do that? Control. Fear. To make you easier to use. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I've seen it before. Not exactly like this, but close enough. People breaking other people down until there's nothing left but what they're told to be. The stranger pulled the blanket tighter. Is that what you think happened to me? I don't know. But those bruises, they're not from one beating. They're layered, old ones under new ones. Whoever had you, they had you for a while. The thought made her stomach turn. She stood abruptly, needing to move, to do something with the sick energy crawling under her skin. She walked to the small shelf where Rowan kept his supplies, dried beans, flour, salt, a few battered books. She pulled one of the books down. The cover was worn smooth, the title barely visible. She opened it randomly and found pressed between the pages a child's drawing. Crude, done in faded pencil. 2 stick figures holding hands. Above them, a crooked house and a sun. Her breath caught. Rowan was beside her in an instant. He took the book from her hands, closing it carefully. Don't. I'm sorry, I didn't mean, it's fine. But his voice said it wasn't. She stepped back, giving him space. Were they yours? He didn't answer, just stood there, holding the book like it might break. Rowan. My daughter drew that, he said finally. Sarah. She was 6. Was. The word sat between them like a stone. What happened? She asked softly. He set the book back on the shelf, his movements careful, deliberate. Fire. 3 years ago. I was supposed to be there. I'd gone into town for supplies, got held up at the blacksmith's. By the time I got back, he stopped. They said it was an accident. Lantern tipped over. The house was old, dry. It went up fast. They? My wife, Eliza, my son, Thomas. He was 8, and Sarah. His voice was flat now, stripped of emotion. I found them in what used to be the bedroom. They'd tried to get out through the window. The stranger felt tears on her face before she realized she was crying. Everyone said I should move on, Rowan continued. Find another town, another life. But I couldn't, so I came up here. Built this place with my own hands. Figured if I stayed far enough away from everything, maybe it wouldn't hurt as much. Did it work? He finally looked at her. What do you think? She didn't have an answer, just crossed the space between them and took his hand. He didn't pull away. They stood like that for a long time, 2 broken people holding on to each other in the dark. Finally, Rowan cleared his throat. You should get some sleep. She nodded but didn't move. I'll keep watch, he added. Whatever's out there, it won't get past me. I know. She went to the bed, but sleep didn't come. She lay there listening to Rowan move around the cabin, checking the rifle, stoking the fire, settling into the chair by the window where he could see the tree line. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. Another answered. And the watching continued. Morning came gray and cold, the kind of day that promised snow. The stranger woke to find Rowan already outside, his breath visible in the frigid air as he split wood. She dressed quickly and stepped onto the porch. Anything? She asked. Tracks. Fresh ones. Whoever it is, they're getting bolder. She wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. What do we do? We don't panic. He buried the axe in a stump and wiped his hands on his pants. But we prepare. He spent the next hour showing her how to load and fire the rifle. She was clumsy at first, her hands shaking, but Rowan was patient. He stood behind her, adjusting her stance, her grip. Breathe out slowly, he said. Squeeze the trigger. Don't pull it. She fired. The recoil knocked her back a step, but she stayed upright. The shot went wide, hitting a tree trunk 10 feet from the target. Better, Rowan said. I missed. You stayed on your feet. That's half the battle. They practiced until her shoulder ached and her ears rang. By the end, she could hit the target more often than not. Not perfect, but enough. Remember, Rowan said as they walked back to the cabin, You don't aim to warn someone. You aim to stop them. The words should have scared her. Instead, they felt necessary. Inside, she made coffee while Rowan cleaned the rifle. They'd fallen into this routine so naturally, it was almost unsettling, like they'd been doing it for years instead of weeks. "Can I ask you something?" she said as she poured. "Depends on the question." "Why are you helping me?" "Really? Not the answer you gave Cole, but the truth." Rowan was quiet for a long moment. "When I found you in that alley, you reminded me of something." "What?" "Someone who'd already died but was still breathing." She set the coffee pot down. "That's grim." "It's true. I saw it in your eyes, that emptiness, and I thought—" He stopped, started again. "After the fire, I was like that. Walking, talking, but not really alive. And no one helped me. Everyone just let me drift away into these hills until I disappeared." "You think you're repaying a debt?" "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of people giving up." He looked at her. "You didn't give up. Even beaten to hell, with no memory, no name, you kept moving. That takes strength most people don't have." She didn't feel strong. She felt broken and scared and lost. But she didn't say that. The day passed in tense quiet. Rowan checked the perimeter 3 times. The stranger worked inside, cleaning, organizing, keeping her hands busy so her mind wouldn't spiral. She found herself drawn back to the shelf, to the books and the small remnants of Rowan's lost family. There was a small wooden horse carved by hand, a woman's handkerchief with delicate embroidery along the edges, a jar of buttons, mixed sizes and colors. She picked up the jar, shaking it gently. The buttons rattled like rain. "Eliza collected those," Rowan said from behind her. She jumped, nearly dropping the jar. "Sorry, I didn't hear you come in." "It's all right." He took the jar from her, studying it. "She said you never knew when you'd need a button. Drove me crazy, keeping jars of useless things. Now I can't bring myself to throw them away. They're not useless, they're memories." He set the jar back carefully. "Sometimes I think memories are the cruelest thing we have. They show you what you lost but can't get back." "Is that why you're helping me? Because I don't have any to lose?" "I'm helping you because it's the right thing to do. The rest—" He shrugged. "The rest is just noise." That night, the Watcher made their move. The stranger woke to Rowan's hand over her mouth. She nearly screamed before she saw his face, his finger to his lips. He pointed toward the window. A shadow moved outside. Then another. Rowan handed her the rifle, then drew a knife from his boot. He moved to the door, silent as smoke. The stranger's heart hammered against her ribs. She checked the rifle like he'd taught her, made sure it was loaded. Her hands were steadier than she expected. The cabin door exploded inward. 2 men rushed in, pistols drawn. Rowan met the first one with his knife, driving it up under the man's ribs before he could fire. The second man got a shot off. The bullet splintered the wall above the bed, before Rowan kicked his knee backward. The crack was audible even over the man's scream. A third man appeared in the doorway. The stranger fired. The recoil slammed her backward, but she saw the man go down, clutching his shoulder. Blood spread between his fingers, black in the dim light. Rowan grabbed her arm. "Move. Now." They ran out the back into the trees. Behind them, she heard shouting, more footsteps. How many were there? Rowan pulled her deeper into the forest, moving fast but careful, choosing paths she couldn't see in the darkness. Branches tore at her clothes, her face. Her breath came in ragged gasps. A gunshot cracked through the trees, then another. Rowan shoved her behind a fallen log. "Stay down!" "Where are you?" But he was already gone, disappearing into the shadows like he was part of them. She pressed herself against the log, rifle clutched to her chest. Her whole body shook. She could hear them coming, crashing through the underbrush, calling to each other. "Find them! The judge wants her alive, but the mountain man's fair game!" So it was true. Judge Cross had sent them. Another gunshot. A man screamed. Then silence. The stranger waited, counting her heartbeats. 50, 100, 200. Footsteps approached. She raised the rifle, finger on the trigger. "It's me," Rowan's voice said quietly. She lowered the weapon, relief flooding through her. He emerged from the darkness, blood on his hands, his shirt torn. "Are you hurt?" she asked. "Not my blood." He crouched beside her. There were 5. 2 dead, 1 wounded, 2 ran off. "They'll come back with more." "We can't keep running." No, we can't. He looked at her. I need to take you somewhere safe, then I'm ending this. Ending it how? I'm going to Silver Bluff. I'm going to find Judge Cross. And I'm going to make it very clear what happens if he sends anyone else after you. That's suicide. Maybe, but it's the only way this stops. She grabbed his arm. Then I'm coming with you. No. Yes, this is my fight, Rowan. Mine more than yours. You don't understand what you're asking. I understand perfectly. Her voice was hard now, certain. I'm tired of being afraid, tired of hiding, tired of being the thing people fight over. If we're doing this, we're doing it together. Rowan stared at her, and she watched something shift in his expression. Resignation, maybe. Or respect. All right, he said finally. But you do exactly what I say, when I say it. No arguing, no hesitation. Agreed? Agreed. They made their way back to the cabin carefully, watching for stragglers. The bodies were still there. The two Rowan had killed, and the one she'd shot, who'd bled out while they were gone. The stranger looked at the man she'd shot, his eyes still open, staring at nothing. She'd taken a life. The thought should have horrified her, but all she felt was hollow. First time? Rowan asked quietly. I don't know, maybe not. He placed a hand on her shoulder. It doesn't get easier. Anyone who tells you it does is lying. They gathered what supplies they could carry, food, ammunition, a second knife for her. Rowan doused the fire and took one last look around the cabin. Will you come back? She asked. I don't know. They left as the first snow began to fall, white flakes drifting down through the trees like ash. The stranger looked back once and saw the cabin disappearing into the storm, already becoming a ghost. The ride to Silver Bluff took most of the night. They stayed off the main roads, using game trails and creek beds that Rowan knew by heart. The stranger rode behind him on the roan, her arms around his waist, her face pressed against his back to keep the wind out. They didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. By the time they reached the outskirts of town, dawn was breaking cold and pale. The streets were empty except for a stray dog nosing through garbage. Rowan pulled the horse to a stop behind the livery stable. Judge Cross has a house on the north end. Big place, white columns, can't miss it. That's where we're headed. What's the plan? We walk in the front door. She blinked. That's it? That's the plan? Sometimes the direct approach works best. People expect you to sneak around. They don't expect you to knock. He dismounted, helped her down. Her legs were stiff from the cold and the ride. She stamped, feeling back into them while Rowan checked his weapons. Remember what I told you, he said. Stay close. Do what I say. And if things go bad, they won't. If they do, he continued, you run. Don't look back. Don't hesitate. Just run. I'm not leaving you. You will if I tell you to. They stared at each other. Finally, she nodded. It was a lie, and they both knew it, but it was the lie he needed to hear. They walked through town as the sun climbed higher. A few early risers saw them, the blacksmith opening his shop, a woman sweeping her porch, but no one tried to stop them. They probably thought Rowan had come to turn her in, collect the reward. Let them think that. Judge Harlan Cross's house sat at the end of a tree-lined street like a monument to wealth and power. 3 stories of white wood and tall windows, a wraparound porch with chairs that had never been sat in, gardens that looked painted on. The stranger felt something twist in her gut looking at it. Not recognition, exactly. More like a warning. Rowan walked up the front steps and knocked, loud, deliberate. Footsteps inside. The door opened. A butler stood there, older man in a pressed suit, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm when he saw who was on his doorstep. Tell the judge he has visitors, Rowan said. Sir, I'm afraid. Rowan pushed past him. The stranger followed. The interior was exactly what she'd expected. Expensive furniture, portraits on the walls, a chandelier hanging in the entryway that probably cost more than most people in Silver Bluff made in a year. You can't just... The butler started. Where is he? Rowan interrupted. A door opened at the end of the hall. Sheriff Cole stepped out, hand on his gun. Well, this is unexpected. Where's Cross? Rowan repeated. Right here, a new voice said. Judge Harlan Cross emerged from the same room. He was tall, silver-haired, dressed in a silk dressing gown that probably cost a fortune. His face was handsome in a cold, carved way, and when his eyes landed on the stranger, something flickered in them. Triumph. "Caroline," he said softly. "Thank heaven. You're safe." The stranger went very still. "That's not my name." "Of course it is. You're Caroline Cross, my daughter. You were taken from our home nearly a month ago by men seeking revenge against me. I've been searching for you ever since." "She doesn't remember you," Rowan said. "I know. The trauma—" Cross's voice broke convincingly. "What they did to her. But she's home now. That's what matters." Cole stepped forward. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave, Hale. Miss Cross is staying here." "Ask her," Rowan said. "Ask her if she wants to stay." All eyes turned to her. The stranger looked at Judge Cross, studied his face, searching for anything familiar. There was nothing, just a stranger wearing concern like a mask. "I don't know you," she said. "I know this is difficult," Cross began. "No. You don't understand. I don't know you. I don't feel anything looking at you. No recognition, no memory, nothing." "That will come back in time. Stop lying." Her voice was sharp now. "If I was your daughter, you'd be different. You'd be—" She struggled for the word. "Broken. Desperate. You'd look like Rowan looked when he talked about his children. But you don't. You just look pleased." Cross's expression hardened. "Sheriff, remove this man from my home." Cole drew his gun. "You heard him, Hale." Rowan didn't move. "She's not going with you. That's not your decision. It's hers, and she's made it." The room went very quiet. Cross sighed, the sound filled with disappointment. "I'd hoped we could do this civilly. Sheriff, if Mr. Hale resists, you're authorized to use force." Cole aimed his gun at Rowan's chest. 2 more deputies appeared from side rooms, weapons drawn. The stranger's hand went to the knife at her belt. "Don't," Rowan said quietly. "I'm not leaving you." "Yes, you are." He looked at Cross. "Let her walk out that door. She goes free, no one follows, and I won't burn this house down around your ears." Cross actually smiled. Brave words for a man with 3 guns pointed at him. "I didn't say I'd survive burning it down." The smile faded. "Caroline," Cross said, turning to her, "I am your father, whether you believe it or not, and I'm trying to protect you. These men who took you, they're still out there. They'll come for you again. Here, you're safe." "Safe?" She laughed, the sound bitter. "You sent 5 men to drag me back. 2 of them are dead. That's your idea of safety?" "I sent them to rescue you from this criminal. His name is Rowan, and he's the only person in this whole town who's shown me any kindness." Cross's jaw tightened. "Sheriff, take her to the guest room upstairs. Lock the door. We'll deal with Hale, and then help Caroline remember who she really is." Cole moved toward her. Rowan stepped between them. "Last chance," Rowan said. "Let her go." "I'm afraid I can't do that," Cross replied. "You see, Caroline knows things she doesn't remember yet, but will. And when she does, those secrets could destroy me. So no, she doesn't get to leave." The stranger's blood went cold. "What secrets?" Cross ignored her, nodding to Cole. "Do it." Everything happened fast. Rowan grabbed Cole's gun hand, twisted. The weapon fired, the bullet punching into the ceiling. The other deputies rushed forward. Rowan threw Cole into them, sending all 3 sprawling. "Run!" he shouted. The stranger ran. She bolted for the door, throwing it open, taking the front steps 2 at a time. Behind her, she heard gunshots, shouting, furniture breaking. Then Rowan was beside her, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. They sprinted for the horse, still tied where they'd left it. More gunshots. A bullet struck the ground inches from her feet. Rowan lifted her onto the horse, swung up behind her, kicked the roan into a gallop. They thundered down the street as half of Silver Bluff woke up to chaos. The stranger looked back and saw Cole and his men pouring out of the house, saw Judge Cross standing on the porch, his face twisted with rage. And she knew with absolute certainty that this was far from over. The roan's hooves pounded the frozen ground, each impact jarring through the stranger's body as they raced away from Silver Bluff. Rowan's arm was tight around her waist, keeping her steady as he urged the horse faster, pushing the animal to its limit. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder. More horses, more men, more guns. "They're gaining!" she shouted over the wind. Rowan didn't answer, just leaned lower, guiding the horse off the main road and into rougher terrain. They crashed through brush and scrambled up a rocky incline that made the roan stumble. For a terrifying moment, the stranger thought they'd go down, but the horse found its footing and surged forward. A bullet whined past her ear. "Stay low," Rowan barked. They plunged into a dense stand of pines, the branches whipping at their faces and clothes. The stranger ducked her head against Rowan's back, tasting blood where a branch had caught her lip. The horse weaved between trees, its breath coming in harsh gasps that matched her own. Another shot cracked through the air, this one striking a tree trunk so close she felt the spray of wood chips against her arm. Rowan pulled the horse to a sudden stop behind a massive boulder. He swung down, pulling her with him. "Can you shoot from horseback?" "I don't know. I've never—" "You're about to learn." He shoved the rifle into her hands. "When I say you fire at whoever comes through those trees, don't aim for them, just make noise. Make them think twice." "What are you going to do?" He was already moving, scrambling up the side of the boulder with his knife between his teeth. The stranger watched him disappear over the top, then turned her attention back to the trees. She could hear them coming. Horses crashing through undergrowth, men shouting directions to each other. Her hands shook as she raised the rifle, braced it against her shoulder the way Rowan had taught her. The first rider burst through the trees. "Now!" Rowan's voice came from above. She fired. The shot went wide, but the rider jerked his horse sideways, spooked. Two more riders appeared behind him. Rowan dropped from the boulder onto the second rider, knife flashing. Both men went down in a tangle of limbs. The third rider wheeled his horse around, gun raised, looking for a target. The stranger fired again. This time she didn't miss. The rider clutched his leg, screaming, his horse rearing in panic. The animal bolted, carrying its wounded rider back the way they'd come. Rowan was on his feet, breathing hard, blood on his hands again. The man he'd pulled from the horse wasn't moving. The first rider had retreated into the trees. "Mount up," Rowan said. They rode hard for another hour, pushing deeper into wilderness the stranger didn't recognize. The terrain grew rougher, all sharp rocks and steep drops. The roan was flagging now, foam flecking its neck, its strides less sure. Finally, Rowan guided them into a narrow ravine where a thin stream cut between high walls of stone. He dismounted, helped her down, then led the horse to the water. "We rest here," he said. 10 minutes. Horse needs it." The stranger collapsed against the ravine wall, her legs trembling. The adrenaline was draining away, leaving nothing but exhaustion and fear. She watched Rowan check the horse over, his movements efficient despite the blood still dripping from the cut above his eye. "Let me look at that," she said, pushing herself upright. "It's nothing. It's bleeding into your eye. Sit down." He did, surprisingly. She used water from the stream and a strip torn from her already ruined dress to clean the wound. It wasn't deep, but head wounds always bled like murder. "What he said?" she began, dabbing carefully. "About me knowing secrets? What do you think he meant?" "Nothing good." Rowan winced as she pressed harder. "Men like Cross don't keep people around unless they're useful. If you know something that could destroy him, he'll do anything to keep you quiet." "But I don't remember anything." "He doesn't know that. Or maybe he knows memory can come back." Rowan caught her wrist gently. "We need to figure out who you really are. Fast. Before he catches up to us." "How?" "I know someone. Old friend, lives 2 days north of here. She's good at finding things out, information, histories, secrets people try to bury. If anyone can dig up who you are and what Cross is hiding, it's her." The stranger tied off the makeshift bandage. 2 days, can we make it? If the horse holds up and they don't catch us first." He stood, testing his balance. "But yeah, we can make it." They rode through the afternoon, staying in the roughest country where horses left few tracks. The stranger's mind kept circling back to Judge Cross's face, the way he'd looked at her. Not with love or relief, but with calculation. Like she was a problem to be solved. What secrets could she possibly know? Evening found them in a high mountain pass where the wind cut like knives. Rowan found a shallow cave, barely deep enough to shelter them and the horse, but it kept the worst of the cold out. He built a small fire using deadwood and struck flint until it caught. They sat close to the flames, sharing the last of the dried meat from Rowan's pack. It wasn't much. They'd left most of their supplies at the cabin. "Tell me about your friend," the stranger said. "The one we're going to see." "Martha Quinn. Met her years ago before He stopped. Before everything. She used to work for a newspaper, digging up corruption, exposing criminals. Made a lot of enemies doing it. Eventually, she decided she liked staying alive more than staying in cities, so she moved out here. She sounds interesting. She's a pain in the ass, but she's good at what she does. He poked at the fire with a stick. She'll want payment. We don't have any money. She doesn't work for money. She works for favors and information. We'll figure something out. The stranger pulled her knees to her chest, staring into the flames. What if we find out who I am, and it's worse than not knowing? Then we deal with it. What if I really am his daughter? What if everything he said is true, and I just can't remember? Rowan looked at her. You think that's true? I don't know what to think anymore. Then think about this, he said. When you looked at him, what did you feel? She considered. Nothing, just emptiness, and she paused. Fear. Not the fear of a daughter seeing her father. Something else, something colder. Trust that. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the wind howled through the pass, carrying the promise of more snow. The horse shifted restlessly, its breath steaming in the cold air. I keep having these dreams, the stranger said quietly. Fragments, really. A room with blue wallpaper. Voices arguing behind a closed door, the smell of cigars and whiskey, and this feeling of being trapped, like I couldn't breathe. When did they start? Since the first night at your cabin. They're getting clearer. She hugged herself tighter. In the last one, I was standing in front of a mirror and I couldn't recognize my own face, like I was wearing someone else's skin. Rowan was quiet for a moment. My wife used to say dreams are the mind's way of processing things we can't face when we're awake. Maybe yours is trying to tell you something. What? That whoever you were before, you're not her anymore. You're someone new now. The thought should have been frightening. Instead, it felt almost like relief. They took turns keeping watch through the night. When it was the stranger's turn, she sat at the cave entrance with the rifle across her lap, watching the darkness for movement. The stars were brilliant this high up, scattered across the sky like thrown diamonds. She thought about Rowan's words. Someone new. Maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Dawn brought clear skies but brutal cold. They set out early, the horse moving stiffly until its muscles warmed. The terrain gradually shifted from rocky passes to dense forest, the trees so thick they blocked out most of the light. By midday, they reached a frozen stream. Rowan dismounted to check the ice. It'll hold the horse? The stranger asked. Should, but go slow. They were halfway across when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong, the mechanical click of a gun being cocked. Don't move, a voice called from the trees. Rowan's hand went to his knife, but a gunshot rang out, the bullet striking the ice inches from the horse's hooves. The roan shied, nearly throwing them both. Next one goes in the animal, the voice warned. 4 men emerged from the tree line, rifles trained. The stranger recognized 2 of them from the attack on the cabin. The other 2 were strangers, hard-faced men who looked like they enjoyed their work. Off the horse, the leader said. He was older than the others, with a scar running from his ear to his jaw. Slow. Rowan dismounted first, hands visible. The stranger followed, her heart hammering. Scarface approached, keeping his rifle leveled. Judge Cross sends his regards. Says to tell you he's disappointed, Caroline. All this trouble for nothing. That's not my name, she said through gritted teeth. Don't matter what you call yourself. You're coming back with us. He looked at Rowan. You, on the other hand, the judge said you're optional. So here's how this works. You walk away right now, we forget we saw you, or you make trouble, and we kill you here, and tell the judge you resisted. I'm not leaving her, Rowan said flatly. Scarface sighed. Figured you'd say that. He raised his rifle. The stranger moved without thinking. She grabbed for the knife at her belt, throwing herself between Rowan and the gun. The shot never came. Instead, another gunshot cracked from somewhere in the trees. Scarface jerked, his rifle falling from his hands as he clutched his shoulder. His men spun, trying to find the shooter. 2 more shots, quick and precise. 2 more men went down. Run! Rowan grabbed the stranger's hand and they bolted for the opposite bank, the horse following. More gunshots behind them, men shouting, chaos. They crashed through the underbrush, branches tearing at them. The stranger's lungs burned, her legs screaming, but she kept moving. Rowan pulled her behind a massive fallen tree, and they crouched, gasping. The forest had gone quiet. Then a woman's voice called out, amused and familiar. Rowan Hale. Still getting into trouble, I see. Rowan stood slowly, hands visible. Martha. A figure emerged from the trees. She was tall, middle-aged, dressed in practical hunting clothes with a rifle slung over her shoulder. Her hair was iron gray, pulled back in a braid, and her eyes were sharp enough to cut. You're 2 days early, Martha Quinn said. I wasn't expecting you until Thursday. How did you, please, you think I don't have people watching Silver Bluff? Soon as you and your friend here made that dramatic exit from the judge's house, word started spreading. She looked at the stranger with open curiosity. So you're the woman causing all this fuss. The stranger found her voice. You just saved our lives. I saved his life. Martha jerked her chin at Rowan. He still owes me for that thing in Carson City. I don't know yet, but anyone Cross wants that badly is either very valuable or very dangerous, maybe both. Can we have this conversation somewhere that's not an ambush site? Rowan asked. Martha grinned. My place is an hour north. Come on, and bring the horse. Looks like it could use some grain and rest. They followed her through the forest, staying off any visible trails. The stranger kept glancing back, half expecting more of Cross's men to appear, but the woods stayed quiet except for their footsteps. Martha's home was built into the side of a hill, half cabin and half cave. It was larger than it looked from outside, with multiple rooms carved into the rock and reinforced with timber. Books lined every available surface, stacked in precarious towers alongside papers, maps, and what looked like surveillance equipment. Make yourself comfortable, Martha said, gesturing vaguely at the organized chaos. I'll see to the horse. When she was gone, the stranger turned to Rowan. Carson City, long story, involved a crooked banker and a misunderstanding about who owned a particular gold claim. Did you kill anyone? Just his reputation? Martha returned a few minutes later, carrying a bottle and 3 glasses. She poured generously, handed them out, then settled into a worn armchair. So, she said, studying the stranger, tell me everything. And I mean everything. What you remember, what you don't, what Cross said, all of it. The stranger talked for the better part of an hour. Martha listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. When the stranger finished, Martha took a long drink and leaned back. Interesting, she said finally. That's it? Rowan asked. That's all you have to say? I'm thinking. Martha stood, pacing. Judge Harlan Cross, appointed to the bench 8 years ago, known for harsh sentences, especially for crimes involving theft or fraud. Lives well, too well for a judge's salary. Rumor has it he's got his fingers in various enterprises around Silver Bluff and beyond. What kind of enterprises? The stranger asked. The kind people don't talk about openly. Land deals that benefit him suspiciously often, contracts awarded to companies he has silent partnerships in, and, Martha paused. There were accusations a few years back, young women disappearing from towns near Silver Bluff, never proven, but the rumors didn't quite die. The stranger felt ice forming in her stomach. I think you need to see something. Martha crossed to a large trunk in the corner, rummaged through it, and pulled out a folder stuffed with newspaper clippings. She spread them on the table. The stranger moved closer. The clippings were old, yellowed, dating back 3 to 5 years. Headlines jumped out at her. Local woman vanishes without trace, Ichasi. Sheriff cites lack of evidence in missing persons case. Family seeks answers in daughter's disappearance. There were photographs. Young women, all in their 20s or early 30s, different faces, different backgrounds, but something similar in their eyes. A vulnerability, maybe, or a sadness. 7 women, Martha said quietly, over a 3-year period. All vanished from towns within a 2-day ride of Silver Bluff. All cases went nowhere. No bodies, no suspects, nothing. The stranger touched one of the photographs. The woman looked back at her, frozen in time, smiling for a camera that wouldn't save her. You think Cross was involved, Rowan said. I think the timing is interesting. The disappearances stopped about a year ago, right around when Cross started talking about his daughter coming to live with him. Martha looked at the stranger. No one ever saw this daughter. She supposedly stayed in the house, wasn't social, didn't come to town functions. Whenever anyone asked, Cross said she was fragile, needed privacy. But he didn't have a daughter, the stranger said slowly. Not one that anyone can verify. I've checked birth records, census data, everything I can access. There's no Caroline Cross. Never has been. The room felt too small suddenly. The stranger backed away from the table, from the photographs of dead women who might have been her. So what am I? She asked. One of them? Someone he took? Maybe. Or maybe you're something else entirely. Martha gathered the clippings carefully. But whatever you are, whatever you know, it's enough that Cross will kill to keep you. Rowan stood, his jaw tight. Then we need to know what she knows. Can you help with that? I can try, but it's not pleasant. Forcing memories that the mind is blocking, there's a reason they're blocked. The stranger met Martha's eyes. Do it anyway. They spent the next 2 days in Martha's cave cabin while she worked. It wasn't like the stranger had imagined. No mystical ceremonies or hypnosis, just Martha asking questions, hundreds of them, circling the same territory from different angles, looking for cracks in the wall her memory had built. Tell me about the smell of cigars, Martha would say. I don't know. I just remember it. Was it one cigar or many? Many, like a room full of smoke. Were there voices? Yes. Men, laughing. How many men? I don't know. More than 2, less than 10. Were you afraid? A pause. Yes. Why? I don't know. Martha would make notes, then shift direction. Tell me about the mirror, the one where you couldn't recognize your face. It was ornate, gold frame, very expensive. Where was it? A bedroom with blue wallpaper. Your bedroom? No, I don't think so. It felt wrong, like I didn't belong there. Round and round they went. The stranger's head ached constantly from the effort of trying to remember. Rowan stayed close, a quiet presence, but he didn't interfere. On the 3rd evening, something broke. Martha had been asking about hands, whether the stranger remembered anyone's hands specifically, and suddenly she did. She remembered hands on her shoulders, pushing her down into a chair. Hands that smelled like tobacco and had a gold ring on the pinky finger. The ring, she gasped. It had an insignia, a snake eating its tail. Martha went very still. An Ouroboros. What? That's what that symbol is called. And I know exactly who wears a ring like that. She stood abruptly, crossing to another stack of papers. She shuffled through them, found what she was looking for, and held up a photograph. It showed Judge Cross at some formal event, shaking hands with another man. The photograph was grainy, but visible on Cross's hand was a ring. He wears it, the stranger said. I remember it. Not just him. It's a group. A secret society, if you want to call it that. Wealthy men, powerful men, who meet regularly. Martha's expression was grim. I've been trying to get information on them for years. They call themselves the Circle, and the rumors about what they do. She stopped. Let's just say if even half of it is true, Cross's disappearances start to make sense. The stranger felt something shifting in her mind, like a door beginning to open. I was at one of their meetings. You're sure? The room with cigar smoke, the men laughing. I was there, but not as... She struggled for the word. Not as a guest. Rowan spoke for the first time in hours. As entertainment. The stranger closed her eyes, but the memory was there now, forcing its way through. A room full of men in expensive suits. Herself in a blue dress that wasn't hers, standing against a wall with other women. The smell of smoke and whiskey and something darker underneath. The way the men looked at them, like they were objects, like they were nothing. I tried to run, she whispered. That's why they beat me. I tried to run and they... Her voice broke. Rowan was beside her in an instant, his hand on her shoulder. You don't have to remember it all at once. Yes, I do. She opened her eyes. Because if I don't, I'll never understand what I have to fight. Martha poured more whiskey, handed it to her. Drink this, then tell me everything you can. The stranger drank. The liquor burned, but it steadied her. She took a breath and let the memories come. She remembered being taken from somewhere. She still couldn't remember where. Remembered a cellar or basement, cold and dark. Other women there, all of them terrified. Remembered being cleaned up, dressed up, told to smile or it would be worse. Remembered the meetings. Men in masks sometimes, sometimes not. Money changing hands. Women disappearing into back rooms with men who paid the most. And Judge Cross, always there, always watching, the ring on his finger catching the light. I heard things, she said, The men thought we weren't listening, or didn't care if we were. They talked about deals, about fixing contracts, about making sure certain people didn't testify. I heard names, companies, crimes. Martha was writing furiously. What names? The stranger rattled off what she could remember. Some of them meant nothing to her, but Martha's eyes got wider with each one. These are... Martha stopped, started again. These are some of the most powerful men in 3 territories. If what you heard can be verified, if there's proof... There was a ledger, the stranger said suddenly. Cross kept it in his study. He was paranoid about it, always checking it, always making sure it was locked away. It had everything, names, dates, payments, what they were for. I saw him looking at it once when he thought I was... She stopped, swallowing hard. When he thought I was too broken to pay attention. Where's the study? Rowan asked. In his house, 2nd floor, west side. We can't go back there, Martha said. The place will be guarded like a fortress now. Then we find another way, Rowan said. They talked late into the night, planning. The stranger's memories kept coming in pieces, each one adding to the picture. By the time exhaustion finally pulled them under, they had the outline of a plan. It was desperate. It was dangerous. It probably wouldn't work, but it was all they had. The stranger lay on the cot Martha had set up for her, staring at the cave ceiling. Somewhere in the darkness, Rowan was doing the same. Martha had gone to sleep in her own room, muttering about needing to contact sources. Rowan? The stranger called quietly. Yeah? Thank you for not leaving me in that alley. A long pause. Thank you for not giving up. She smiled despite everything. We're a pair, aren't we? Seems like. Another pause, then, if we pull this off, if we get that ledger and expose Cross, what then? Then you're free, Rowan said simply. And you? I don't know. Haven't thought that far ahead. The stranger turned onto her side, looking toward where his voice came from in the darkness. Maybe you could think about it now, about what comes after. Maybe, he said, but he didn't sound convinced. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but her mind was too full of fractured memories, of terror and violence, of the faces of women who hadn't escaped. She'd been one of the lucky ones. Somehow, she'd gotten away. But luck only lasted so long. And Judge Harlan Cross was still out there, with all his power and money and the weight of the circle behind him. Tomorrow, they'd start planning in earnest. Tomorrow, they'd figure out how to break into the most dangerous man in Silver Bluff's house and steal the one thing that could destroy him. Tomorrow. But tonight, in the darkness of Martha Quinn's cave, the stranger let herself feel something she hadn't felt since this all began. Not hope, exactly. Hope was too fragile, too easily crushed. But determination. She was done running, done hiding, done being someone's possession. Whatever name she'd had before, whoever she'd been, that woman was gone. The person lying here in the dark, planning impossible things with a broken mountain man and a cynical information broker, that was who she was now. And that person was going to fight. Morning came too fast and not fast enough. The stranger woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Martha's voice, sharp and frustrated, coming from the main room. She dressed quickly and emerged to find Martha pacing, a telegram crumpled in her hand. Problem? Rowan asked from where he sat cleaning his rifle. My contact in Silver Bluff just sent word. Cross has doubled the guards at his house. Posted men at every entrance, patrols around the perimeter, every hour. Martha threw the telegram on the table. He knows we're coming, or he's just being careful, the stranger said. Either way, it makes our job harder. Martha poured coffee, her movements jerky with irritation. We need a distraction, something big enough to pull most of those guards away from the house. Rowan set down the rifle. What did you have in mind? I don't know yet. That's the problem. She turned to the stranger. You said you remember the layout of the house? Some of it. The main floor, the stairs, the 2nd floor hallway. The study is... She closed her eyes, trying to pull the memory into focus. 3rd door on the left from the top of the stairs. Heavy oak door with a lock. He kept the key on a chain around his neck. Of course he did, Martha muttered. What about windows? One window in the study faces east, but it's on the 2nd floor. You'd need a ladder or someone willing to climb, Rowan interrupted. He looked at Martha. You still have that climbing gear you used in the Carson City job? Martha's expression shifted, calculating. You're not serious. I've scaled worse. That was 5 years ago. You're not getting younger. Neither are you, but I don't mention it. Despite the tension, Martha almost smiled. Fine, but you'll need someone inside to unlock the window. All eyes turned to the stranger. She felt her stomach drop. You want me to go back in there? You're the only one who knows the layout, Martha said, and you're the only one Cross wants alive. His men won't shoot you on sight. They'll just drag me back to whatever hell I escaped from. Not if we time it right. Rowan stood, moving to the table where Martha had spread out a rough map of Silver Bluff. We create the distraction here. He pointed to the east end of town. Something loud, something that looks like a real threat. Cross will send most of his men to deal with it. That's when you go in through the front door. Just walk in? Why not? You're what he wants. He won't turn you away. The stranger stared at him. And then what? I ask politely for the ledger. Then you find the study, unlock the window from inside, and get out of the way while I come through it. Rowan traced a path on the map. I get the ledger, we both get out, meet at the rendezvous point Martha sets up. That's insane. You have a better idea? She didn't. That was the worst part. They spent the rest of the day refining the plan, arguing over details, trying to account for every variable. Martha sent messages to her network in Silver Bluff, gathering information on guard rotations, the judge's schedule, anything that might give them an edge. By evening, they had something that might work, or might get them all killed. The odds felt about even. The stranger sat outside as the sun set, watching the sky turn from gold to purple to black. She heard footsteps behind her and knew, without looking, it was Rowan. Second thoughts? He asked, settling beside her. About 1,000 of them. That's normal. Is it? She glanced at him. You've done this before. Risked everything on a plan that's mostly hope and luck. Once or twice. He was quiet for a moment. After the fire, I stopped caring much about dying. Made it easier to do stupid things. But this... He gestured vaguely at the darkening landscape. This feels different. How? Because I actually want to see tomorrow. The words settled between them, heavy with meaning. The stranger felt something shift in her chest, something warm and terrifying at the same time. We might not get tomorrow, she said quietly. I know. Rowan looked at her. But if we do, I want to spend it somewhere other than running or hiding. Maybe that cabin wasn't much, but it was starting to feel like home, she finished. He nodded. She reached out and took his hand. His fingers were rough, scarred, but they held hers gently. They sat like that as full darkness fell, two people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and were about to walk back into danger anyway. If this goes wrong, she started, it won't. But if it does, then we'll handle it. His grip tightened slightly. Together. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe they were more than just survivors clinging to each other in a storm. But belief required hope, and hope was still a luxury she couldn't quite afford. They left before dawn, riding hard for Silver Bluff. Martha came with them, along with 2 men she'd recruited, hard-eyed types who asked no questions and expected payment in favors, not coin. The stranger didn't ask what Martha had promised them. They reached the outskirts of town by mid-morning and split up. Martha and her men headed east toward the rail yard where they'd set their distraction. Rowan and the stranger circled north, staying in the tree line until they could see Cross's house in the distance. It looked different in daylight, less imposing somehow, though the guards Martha had warned about were clearly visible. 6 men that the stranger could count, probably more she couldn't. You remember the signal? Rowan asked. 3 gunshots, rapid succession. And if something goes wrong before that? I improvise. Not what I wanted to hear. She managed a weak smile. It's all I've got. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small revolver. Take this. Hide it somewhere they won't look. She took the gun, felt its weight. I don't know if I can. You can. His voice was certain. You've already killed once to stay alive. You'll do it again if you have to. She tucked the revolver into her boot, the metal cold against her leg. Part of her was horrified at how easily she'd accepted it. The rest of her knew Rowan was right. They waited. The sun climbed higher, warming the frozen ground. The The stranger's nerves stretched tighter with each passing minute. Then, in the distance, an explosion. The sound rolled across Silver Bluff like thunder. Smoke began rising from the east end of town, black and thick. Shouting erupted. Church bells started ringing in alarm. At Cross's house, chaos. Men ran from their posts, scrambling toward the smoke. Orders were shouted. Horses were saddled in a panic. Within 5 minutes, half the guards were gone. "Now," Rowan said. The stranger stood, brushed off her dress, and started walking toward the house. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to run the other direction. She kept walking. One of the remaining guards saw her coming. He raised his rifle, then lowered it when he recognized her. He called to someone inside the house. The front door opened. Sheriff Cole stepped out, his expression shifting from surprise to something that might have been satisfaction. "Well," he said, "decided to come home after all, did you?" The stranger stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. "I want to talk to Judge Cross." "I bet you do." Cole descended the stairs. "He's going to be real pleased to see you. I want guarantees, my safety, no prosecution for—" "You're not in a position to negotiate." Cole grabbed her arm, not gently. "You ran. That was stupid. Now you face the consequences." He dragged her into the house. The stranger let him, didn't fight. Her eyes tracked everything, the hallway, the stairs, the positions of the 2 guards who remained inside. She noted the door to what looked like a parlor, another that might lead to the kitchen, and the stairs to the 2nd floor exactly where she remembered them. Cole pulled her into the same room where they'd confronted Cross before. The judge was there, standing by the window, watching the smoke rise over his town. He turned when they entered. "Caroline," he said, and there was genuine anger beneath the false warmth now. "You've caused me considerable trouble. That wasn't my intention." "No? Then what was your intention, running off with that criminal?" "Survival." Cross moved closer, studying her. "You look different, stronger. I suppose Hale taught you a few things." "He taught me I don't have to be afraid of you." The judge's smile was cold. "Is that so?" He nodded to Cole. "Take her upstairs. Lock her in the guest room. We'll deal with this after I've sorted out whatever disaster is happening in my town." "No," the stranger said. Cross raised an eyebrow. "No? I came back because I remembered something. Something about your meetings. About the circle." She watched his expression carefully. "And I'm willing to forget it again, if we can make a deal." For the first time, Cross looked genuinely interested. "What kind of deal?" "You let me walk away. Give me money to start somewhere new. And I never speak about what I saw. And why would I agree to that when I can simply keep you here?" "Because I wrote it all down," she lied. "Every name I remember, every crime I overheard, I gave it to someone who'll make it public if anything happens to me." It was a good bluff. She watched Cross weigh it, saw him trying to determine if she was telling the truth. "Who?" he demanded. "Someone you can't reach." Cross stepped closer, his face inches from hers. "You're lying." "Am I?" She held his gaze. "Are you willing to risk it? Risk everything you've built, all that power, on the chance that I'm bluffing?" The room went very quiet. Cole's hand drifted toward his gun. Then Cross smiled. "You've developed some spine, I'll give you that. But you've also made a critical mistake." "What's that?" "You came back." He turned to Cole. "Search her. Thoroughly. Then lock her upstairs. If she's written anything down, we'll find it." Cole moved toward her. The stranger backed up, her hand dropping toward her boot. The window exploded inward. Glass shattered everywhere. Rowan came through in a roll, gun already drawn. He fired twice. One guard went down, then the other. Cole spun, reaching for his weapon, but Rowan was faster. A single shot, and Cole dropped, clutching his leg. Cross didn't move, just stood there, watching with something like resignation. "Study's upstairs," Rowan said to the stranger. "Go." She ran, took the stairs 2 at a time, her boots sliding on the polished wood. Behind her, she heard Cross start to say something, then Rowan's sharp command for him to shut up. The 2nd-floor hallway was exactly as she remembered. 3rd door on the left. She tried the handle, locked, of course. She stepped back and kicked it, the way she'd seen Rowan do. The door shuddered, but held. She kicked again. Again. On the 4th try, the wood around the lock splintered. The door swung open. The study was smaller than she'd expected. A desk, shelves lined with law books, a safe built into the wall behind a painting. The window she'd promised to unlock was right there. She ran to it, fumbling with the latch. It was stuck, painted over maybe. She grabbed a letter opener from the desk and pried at it until it gave. The window opened. But there was no one outside. No Rowan waiting to climb in, because Rowan was downstairs holding a gun on Judge Cross and Sheriff Cole. The stranger heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, multiple sets. The guards were coming back. She slammed the study door shut and dragged the desk chair over, wedging it under the handle. It wouldn't hold long, but it might buy her a minute. The safe. She had to focus on the safe. She pulled down the painting, some pastoral scene worth more than most people earned in a year, and stared at the combination lock. No chance of opening it without the combination. Unless. She grabbed the letter opener again and jammed it into the crack between the safe door and frame, prying with all her strength. Nothing. She looked around frantically for something heavier, a bookend. Solid brass, shaped like a horse. She wedged the letter opener deeper and hammered at it with the bookend. The noise was horrendous, but she didn't care. The door handle rattled behind her. Someone slammed into the study door. "Open up!" a voice shouted. She kept hammering. The safe's lock mechanism made a groaning sound. Almost there, the study door cracked, the chair starting to give. One more hit. The safe door popped open. Inside were stacks of cash, some jewelry, and a leather-bound ledger. She grabbed the ledger, flipped it open. Names, dates, amounts. In Cross's own handwriting, it was everything Martha had said it would be. The study door burst open. 2 guards rushed in, guns drawn. The stranger grabbed the revolver from her boot and fired. Not at them, at the window. The glass shattered outward. Then she jumped. It was a stupid thing to do, a desperate thing. She hit the ground hard, the impact driving the air from her lungs, sending white-hot pain through her ankle. But she held on to the ledger. She forced herself upright, limping, and looked up to see the guards leaning out the broken window, aiming. A gunshot cracked from somewhere to her right. One guard jerked back. Another shot, and the second guard disappeared from view. Martha emerged from behind a shed, rifle smoking. "Move!" The stranger moved, pain screaming through her leg with each step. Martha grabbed her arm, supporting her as they ran for the tree line. Behind them, the house erupted in chaos. More gunshots, men shouting, the sound of horses being mounted. They crashed into the trees just as riders poured out of Cross's property. Martha pulled her down behind a fallen log, pressing a finger to her lips. The riders thundered past, heading toward the smoke still rising from the east end of town. When the sound faded, Martha helped her up. "Where's Rowan?" Still inside, he was... More gunshots from the house, then an explosion that shook the ground, sending birds screaming into the sky. "What the hell?" Martha breathed. Black smoke began pouring from the house's lower windows. Fire licked at the frames. The stranger's heart stopped. "Rowan!" She tried to run back, but Martha held her. "You can't! Let me go!" "Listen to me," Martha said fiercely. "If he's still alive, running back there gets you both killed. If he's not..." She stopped. "Either way, we need to get clear. Now." The stranger wanted to fight, to scream, to do anything but run away. But Martha was right. She let herself be pulled deeper into the trees, each step taking her farther from the burning house and whatever fate Rowan had met inside. They made it to where the horses were hidden. Martha practically threw the stranger onto one, then mounted her own. They rode hard, not stopping until they were miles away, deep in territory where Cross's men wouldn't follow without preparation. Finally, Martha pulled up in a clearing. The stranger dismounted, her injured ankle giving out. She fell to her knees, still clutching the ledger. "We have to go back," she said. "We can't. He could be alive. He could be. If he's alive, he'll find his way out. Rowan survived worse." But Martha's voice lacked conviction. The stranger looked down at the ledger in her hands. They'd gotten what they came for. All those names, all those crimes, proof that could bring down Cross and everyone in the circle. But the cost. She thought about Rowan's face that morning, the way he'd said he wanted to see tomorrow, the way he'd held her hand in the darkness. "This better be worth it," she said quietly. Martha didn't answer. They rode through the afternoon, putting more distance between themselves and Silver Bluff. The stranger's mind kept replaying those last moments. Rowan coming through the window, the gunshots, the explosion. She couldn't make the pieces fit into a story where he survived. As the sun began to set, Martha led them to a small cave she'd used before as a waypoint. They made camp, but neither had much appetite. The stranger sat with her back against the cave wall, the ledger open on her lap, not really seeing the words. "You should rest," Martha said. "That ankle needs—" "I don't care about my ankle." "He wouldn't want you to." "Don't!" The stranger's voice cracked. "Don't tell me what he would want. You don't know." Martha was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I've known Rowan for 8 years, and in all that time I never saw him care about anything the way he cared about you." "Then why isn't he here?" "Because he knew what mattered. Getting you out, getting that ledger. That was the mission. And Rowan always finished his missions, no matter the cost." The stranger closed the ledger, unable to look at it anymore. All these names, all these powerful men who'd never faced justice without this evidence. And the man who'd made it possible might be dead in a burning house. "What do we do now?" she asked. "We finish it," Martha said firmly. "We take this ledger to every newspaper, every lawman who isn't in Cross's pocket. We make sure the world knows what these men did. We make Rowan's sacrifice mean something. And if he's not dead, then we make sure he has a victory to come back to." They sat in silence as darkness fell. The stranger drifted in and out of an exhausted sleep, jerking awake at every sound, hoping it was Rowan riding into camp. It never was. Near midnight, Martha shook her awake. "Someone's coming." The stranger was on her feet instantly, ignoring the pain in her ankle. She grabbed the rifle, moved to the cave entrance. A single rider approached through the trees, moving slowly, like they were hurt. Martha raised her weapon. "Identify yourself." The rider came into the moonlight. It was Rowan. The stranger's legs nearly gave out. She ran to him as he dismounted, or tried to. He was burned, bleeding, barely standing. She caught him as he stumbled. "You're alive," she said, and the words came out like a prayer. "Barely." His voice was rough, damaged by smoke. "Cross?" "We don't know. The house was burning when we left." "Good." He swayed, and she held him tighter. "The ledger?" "We have it." He nodded, then his eyes rolled back and he collapsed. Between her and Martha, they got him into the cave, laid him out near the fire. The burns weren't as bad as they could have been, but he'd taken a bullet to the shoulder and lost a lot of blood. Martha worked on him while the stranger held his hand, refusing to let go. She watched him breathe, counted each rise and fall of his chest, made bargains with fate she knew she couldn't keep. "He'll live," Martha said finally, sitting back. "But he needs real rest. Days of it." "We'll give him that. We need to move on this ledger. Every day we wait, I don't care." The stranger looked at Martha. "You take it. Do whatever needs to be done. I'm staying with him." Martha studied her, then nodded. "All right, I'll head to Carson City, start making copies, sending them to contacts. You two stay here, stay hidden. When this breaks, and it will, there's going to be hell to pay." She left at first light, the ledger secured in her saddlebag. The stranger watched her ride away, then returned to Rowan's side. He woke periodically, fevered and confused. She gave him water, changed his bandages, talked to him even when she wasn't sure he could hear. "You're going to be fine," she told him. "We did it. We got the ledger. Martha's going to bring them all down. Cross, the circle, all of them. We won." His eyes focused on her for a moment. "Did we?" "Yes." "What did it cost?" She didn't have an answer for that, so she just held his hand and waited for the fever to break. 3 days passed. Rowan improved slowly, the fever finally releasing its grip. On the 4th day, he sat up without help and managed to eat some of the soup she'd made. "How bad was it?" she asked. "The house. Bad. Cross tried to burn evidence, started a fire in his study. It spread faster than he expected." Rowan touched his shoulder gingerly. "Cole got a shot off before I could stop him, but I made it to a window, dropped to the ground, crawled to where I'd left my horse." "Did Cross make it out?" "Don't know. Don't care." He looked at her. "What matters is you're safe." "We're safe," she corrected. "Both of us." He almost smiled. "Both of us." They stayed in the cave another week while Rowan healed and they waited for word from Martha. It came in the form of a messenger, a young man who looked terrified to be carrying such dangerous information. The letter was brief. Martha had done it. Copies of the ledger had been distributed to newspapers in 3 territories. The story was breaking. Arrests were being made. Judge Harlan Cross was dead, killed in the fire at his home, though whether by accident or his own hand, no one knew for certain. The circle was broken. The stranger read the letter aloud to Rowan, then sat down heavily. "It's over. It's over," he agreed. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like exhaustion and loss and relief all mixed together into something too complicated to name. "What now?" she asked. Rowan looked at her. "What do you want?" "I want to go home." "You don't have a home." "Yes, I do." She met his eyes. "Or I did. A cabin in the mountains, if it's still standing." Understanding dawned on his face. "It might not be much anymore. Could be Cross's men burned it." "Then we'll rebuild it." "We?" "If you'll have me." Rowan reached out and took her hand. "I'd have you." They left the cave the next morning, riding north toward the mountains, toward the cabin that might not be there anymore, toward a future that was uncertain and probably hard. But they were riding toward it together. And somehow, that was enough. The journey back took 5 days. They moved slowly, Rowan still healing, the stranger's ankle still tender. They didn't talk much during the ride, both lost in thoughts about what they might find when they reached the cabin, or what they might not find. On the 3rd day, they passed through a small settlement neither of them had seen before. Just a handful of buildings clustered around a crossroads, the kind of place that existed because someone had decided to stop moving and everyone else followed. A general store, a blacksmith, a building that might have been a church once, but now looked abandoned. They stopped to buy supplies. The woman running the store was ancient, all wrinkles and sharp eyes. She looked at them like she could read their whole history in a glance. "You two running from something, or toward it?" she asked as she wrapped their purchases. "Toward," the stranger said. "That's good. Running from never works. Tried it myself once." The old woman tied the package with string. "Whatever you're heading toward, I hope it's still there when you arrive." "So do we," Rowan said. They camped that night in a meadow that reminded the stranger of nothing in particular, which somehow made it perfect. No memories attached to it, good or bad, just grass and stars and the sound of their horses cropping nearby. "I've been thinking," the stranger said as they sat by the fire. "About names." Rowan looked up from the coffee he was brewing. "Yeah? Everyone keeps calling me Caroline, but that's not who I am. That was just another cage cross built." She poked at the fire with a stick. "And I can't remember my real name if I ever had one that was actually mine." "So pick a new one." "Just like that?" "Why not? You get to choose now. That's what freedom means." She considered this. "What would you choose if you could start over?" "Start. I wouldn't." He poured coffee into 2 tin cups. "I'm Rowan Hale. That name carries my family, my losses, everything I've survived. Changing it wouldn't change any of that. But I'm not carrying anything. I'm empty." "You're not empty." His voice was firm. "You're carrying everything you've survived too. You just don't have a word for it yet." She took the coffee he offered, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. "Tell me something about your daughter, something happy." Rowan was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Sarah loved butterflies. Used to chase them around the yard for hours. Never caught one, but she didn't care. Just loved the chase." A small smile touched his lips. "One day she came running in, screaming that she'd finally caught one. Eliza and I came out, and there she was, cupping her hands so carefully. She opened them, and..." He paused. It was a leaf. Just a dead leaf that had blown past. But the look on her face when she realized, his voice caught. She cried like her heart was broken. "What did you do?" I told her that was okay. That sometimes things aren't what we hope they are, but that doesn't mean we stop hoping. He stared into his coffee. Then we buried the leaf in the garden, like it was something precious. Because to her, it was. The stranger felt tears on her face. "You were a good father." "I don't know about that, but I tried." They sat in silence, watching the fire burn low. After a while, the stranger said, "I think I want to be called Anna." "Anna." Rowan tested the name. "Why that one?" "I don't know. It feels right. Simple, clean, a name without history." "Anna it is then." She smiled. It felt good to have a name she'd chosen herself, not one given by parents she couldn't remember or forced on her by men who wanted to own her. Just Anna. Hers. The next day they reached familiar territory. The hills Rowan knew, the trails he'd walked for years. As they got closer to where the cabin should be, the stranger, Anna, noticed him growing tense. "Maybe we should prepare ourselves," she said quietly, "for it being gone." "I know. We can rebuild, or find somewhere else. It doesn't have to be." "I know," he repeated. But she could hear the fear underneath. They rounded the last bend, and there it was. The cabin still stood. It was damaged. Bullet holes in the walls, one window shattered, the door hanging crooked on its hinges. But it stood. The clearing around it was trampled, evidence of the fight that had happened there. But the forest had already started reclaiming it, grass growing over the disturbed earth. Anna dismounted carefully, her ankle protesting. She walked toward the cabin slowly, half expecting it to disappear like a mirage. But it stayed solid, real. Rowan came up beside her. "Well, could be worse. Could be better too. That's life." They spent the rest of that day assessing the damage. The interior was a mess. Furniture overturned, supplies scattered, bloodstains on the floor from the men Rowan had killed. But the structure was sound. The roof hadn't leaked. The fireplace still drew properly. It was fixable. They started the next morning. Anna had no experience with carpentry or repairs, but she learned. Rowan was patient, showing her how to measure boards, how to drive nails straight, how to check if something was level. Her hands blistered and bled, but she kept working. "You're getting good at this," Rowan said on the third day as she replaced a broken window pane. "I'm getting tired of bleeding on everything. That's part of it. Building something always costs blood and sweat. Is it worth it?" He looked around the cabin, at the work they'd done, the progress they'd made. "Ask me when we're finished." It took 2 weeks to make the cabin livable again. They replaced the broken windows, patched the bullet holes, fixed the door. Anna scrubbed the bloodstains until her knuckles were raw, determined to erase that particular memory from the wood. They were running low on supplies when a rider appeared on the trail. Anna grabbed the rifle instinctively, but Rowan put a hand on her arm. "It's Martha." The older woman looked exhausted, like she'd been riding hard for days. She dismounted stiffly and accepted the coffee Anna poured without a word of greeting. "It's done," Martha said finally. "All of it. The newspapers ran the story. 23 men arrested so far, including 2 judges and a territorial governor. The circle's finished." "What about the women?" Anna asked. "The ones who were—" She couldn't finish. "We found 3 alive, locked in a building cross-owned outside of Silver Bluff." Martha's expression was grim. "The others, there were graves, 12 of them." Anna felt sick. 12 women who hadn't escaped. 12 women who could have been her. "The survivors," she said. "What will happen to them? Same thing that's happening to you. They get to choose. New names, new lives, whatever they need." Martha pulled an envelope from her coat. "Speaking of which, this is for you. Payment for services rendered." Anna opened it. Inside was more money than she'd ever seen. "I can't take this." "You can and you will. You risked your life for that ledger. This is your share of the reward." Martha stood. "There's also this." She pulled out a folded paper. "It's a deed to this property. Rowan never officially owned it, just squatted here, but I pulled some strings, called in some favors. It's yours now. Both of yours if you want." Anna looked at Rowan. He seemed as stunned as she felt. "Why?" he asked. "Because you earned it, both of you." Martha moved toward her horse. "I need to keep moving. There are still threads to tie up, people to track down. But you two—" She paused. "You're free now. Try to remember what that means." She rode away before they could thank her properly. Anna held the deed in her hands, reading the words that made this place officially theirs. A home. An actual home with papers and everything. "We should celebrate," she said. Rowan raised an eyebrow. "How?" "I don't know. People celebrate things, right? When something good happens?" "I wouldn't know. Haven't had much practice." She laughed, surprising herself. When was the last time she'd laughed? She couldn't remember. "Then we'll figure it out together." They used some of the money to buy proper supplies from the settlement they'd passed through. A real bed frame, blankets that weren't threadbare, cooking pots that didn't leak, books, because Anna discovered she liked reading. Seeds for a garden, because spring was coming and they needed to think about food. The woman at the general store remembered them. Found what you were heading toward, I see. We did, Anna said. Good. You look happier, both of you. Anna realized it was true. She did feel happier. Not in a simple, uncomplicated way. There was still too much pain, too many memories trying to surface. But there was something else, too. Something that felt like possibility. They spent the winter finishing the cabin, making it into something more than just shelter. Anna painted the walls, not blue, never blue, but a warm cream color that caught the light. Rowan built shelves and a proper table. They hung curtains in the windows, simple cloth that gave them privacy without shutting out the world. One evening, in late February, Anna was cooking dinner when she noticed something on the shelf. The jar of buttons that had belonged to Rowan's wife. It had been moved to a less prominent position, pushed back behind some books. You moved Eliza's buttons, she said. Rowan looked up from the chair he was repairing. Yeah. Why? He set down his tools. Because this isn't a shrine anymore, it's a home. And I needed to make room for new things. Are you sure? I don't want you to feel like you have to forget. I'm not forgetting, He struggled for words. I'm learning to live alongside it instead of inside it. Does that make sense? It did, more than he knew. Spring came slowly, grudgingly, the snow melting in patches. Anna planted the garden with Rowan's help, learning which seeds went where, how deep to plant them. Her hands, once soft despite the bruises, grew calloused and strong. Think anything will actually grow? She asked, looking at the bare earth. Only one way to find out. They were sitting on the porch one evening in early April when Anna said, I had another dream last night. Rowan waited. I remembered my mother's face. Really remembered it, not just fragments. She pulled her knees up, resting her chin on them. She was beautiful and sad. She paused. I think she tried to protect me from something and couldn't. I think that's why I ended up where I did. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. I want to. She turned to look at him. I think my father sold me to pay a debt or for money or who knows why. And my mother couldn't stop him. She tried, but her voice broke. In the dream, she was crying, saying she was sorry, over and over. Rowan moved closer, putting his arm around her. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. I know, but I'm still sorry it happened. They sat like that as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Anna thought about the woman in her dream, about the sadness in her eyes. Thought about all the women in Judge Cross's ledger, all the lives destroyed by men who saw people as property. I want to do something, she said suddenly. Do what? Help. The women Martha found, the ones who survived, they'll need places to go, ways to start over. We have money now. We have space. We could... She gestured around. We could offer them something, if they want it. Rowan was quiet for a moment. That's a big responsibility. I know. And it might bring trouble. People asking questions, making assumptions. I know that too. Then let's do it. Anna looked at him, surprised. Just like that? Just like that. This place was a tomb for too long. Maybe it's time it became something that helps people live instead. They wrote to Martha that night. By summer, 2 women had arrived. One who'd been found in Cross's prison, another who'd escaped years ago and had been living rough ever since. They were broken in different ways, skittish and silent at first. Anna understood that. She'd been there. The cabin wasn't big enough for everyone, so they built another structure, a bunkhouse with 4 beds and a small common area. Rowan taught the women basic skills, how to shoot, how to survive in the wilderness, how to fix things that broke. Anna taught them other things, how to choose a new name if they wanted, how to sit with the silence without drowning in it, how to laugh again even when it felt impossible. Not all of them stayed. Some healed enough to want lives elsewhere, in towns or cities where they could disappear into crowds. Anna and Rowan gave them money, supplies, whatever they needed to start over. But some stayed. By the end of the first year, there were 5 women living in the bunkhouse, helping with the garden, building new structures, creating something that wasn't quite a commune, but wasn't quite just a refuge either. It was a place where people who'd been broken could learn to be whole again, or at least learn to live with the cracks. One evening in late autumn, Anna was sitting on the porch watching the sunset when Rowan joined her. They'd fallen into this routine, end of the day, sitting together, not always talking, but always present. "You ever regret it?" he asked. "Coming back here instead of taking that money and disappearing somewhere easier?" Anna thought about it. "No. Do you? Regret taking in a stranger from an alley?" "Not even for a second." They sat in comfortable silence. Inside the bunkhouse, she could hear laughter, one of the women telling a story, the others responding. It was a sound that had been absent from this place for too long. "I think Sarah would have liked this," Rowan said quietly. "What we're doing here. She always wanted to help things that were hurt. Birds with broken wings, stray cats, that kind of thing." It was the first time he'd mentioned his daughter without pain in his voice. Anna reached over and took his hand. "I think she would have been proud of you." "Maybe. Or maybe she'd have wondered why it took me so long to figure out how to live again." "You were grieving. That takes time." 3 years is a lot of time. There's no timeline for that kind of loss." Anna squeezed his hand. "You got there when you got there. That's what matters." Inside the cabin, Anna had created a small altar of sorts. Not religious, she'd never been religious, even in the fragments of memory she'd recovered, but meaningful. A photograph of Rowan's family that Martha had managed to track down, the wooden horse he'd carved for his son, the jar of buttons. And next to them, new things. A pressed flower from the first bloom in their garden, a stone Anna had found that was perfectly smooth, a letter from one of the women who'd left and was now thriving in California. Old grief and new hope, sitting side by side. That's what healing looked like, she'd learned. Not forgetting or moving on, but making room for both. Winter came again, their second in the cabin. This one felt different. They were prepared now, with stores of food and firewood, warm clothes, and solid walls. The women in the bunkhouse had learned enough to take care of themselves, though Anna still checked on them daily. On a particularly cold evening in January, everyone gathered in the main cabin for dinner. It was cramped with 7 people, but that was okay. Warm bodies, warm food, warm fire. They developed a tradition. Each person shared one thing they were grateful for. It had been Anna's idea initially, something to combat the darkness that winter could bring. "I'm grateful for this venison," one woman said, practical as always. "I'm grateful for a roof that doesn't leak," said another. When it came to Anna's turn, she looked around the room. At these women who'd survived impossible things. At Rowan, who'd somehow survived his own hell and came out the other side willing to help others survive theirs. "I'm grateful for second chances," she said, "and for people brave enough to take them." Rowan's turn. He was never comfortable with this tradition, always struggled to find words, but tonight he said, "I'm grateful for a woman without a name who taught me that you can build something new from broken pieces." The women applauded, teasing and warm. Anna felt her face flush, but she smiled. Later, after everyone had returned to the bunkhouse and they were alone again, Rowan said, "I meant that. What I said. I know. You changed my life, you know that, right?" Anna moved closer to him. They'd grown physically comfortable with each other over the months, but they'd never pushed beyond companionship. Both of them too damaged, too cautious. But tonight, she kissed him. It was soft, tentative, asking a question. He answered by pulling her closer, his hands gentle in her hair. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Anna said, "Is this okay?" "More than okay. I'm still broken in places. So am I. We'll figure it out." And they did. Slowly, carefully, learning each other's scars and where they could touch without causing pain. It wasn't perfect. Nothing in their lives had been perfect, but it was real and honest and theirs. Spring returned, bringing the garden back to life. The seeds they'd planted bloomed into vegetables, herbs, flowers. Anna spent hours tending them, learning which plants needed more water, which ones thrived in shade. One of the women, the one who'd been most skittish when she arrived, announced she was leaving, not running, but choosing. She'd saved enough money, had a plan to apprentice with a seamstress in a town 2 territories over. "Will you be all right?" Anna asked. "I think so. For the first time, I actually think so." The woman hugged her tight. "Thank you for showing me what freedom looks like." After she left, Anna cried. Happy tears, sad tears, relief tears, all mixed together. "You can't save everyone," Rowan said gently. "I know, but we can give them a chance to save themselves." More women came through. Some stayed weeks, some months, some years. The bunkhouse was expanded, then expanded again. They built a third structure, a workshop where women could learn trades, woodworking, leathercraft, basic blacksmithing. The settlement they'd visited started sending people their direction. Women fleeing bad situations? Yes, but also men sometimes. Widowers who didn't know how to go on, young men running from violence they didn't want to perpetuate. The place grew organically, without plan or design. Some people stayed, some moved on, but everyone who passed through left changed. And Anna and Rowan changed too. The lines around his eyes deepened, but they came from smiling now as often as from pain. She grew stronger, more confident, the terrified woman from the alley becoming someone who could build things, grow things, help things heal. 5 years after Anna had first stumbled into Silver Bluff, Martha visited it again. She looked older, tired, but satisfied. The last member of the circle was convicted yesterday, she announced. 20-year sentence. It's over. Completely over. They celebrated that night with everyone in the compound. That's what they'd started calling it, the compound, though it was really just a collection of buildings clustered around hope and stubbornness. Martha pulled Anna aside at one point. You've built something remarkable here. We all built it. No, you and Rowan started it. Don't diminish that. Martha looked around at the buildings, the gardens, the people. You took your trauma and turned it into something that helps others. That's rare. I had help. Everyone needs help. Not everyone accepts it. Martha smiled. You're not the woman without a name anymore. You're Anna, and you've made that name mean something. After Martha left, Anna walked the compound alone, past the gardens where vegetables grew in neat rows, past the bunkhouse where someone was playing a guitar, others singing along, past the workshop where a young man was learning to carve wood, the way Rowan had taught him. She ended up at the small cemetery they'd created on the hill overlooking everything. Wooden markers for the 12 women they'd found in graves outside Silver Bluff. They'd brought their remains here, given them a proper burial, marked each one with their name, or unknown when names couldn't be found. Anna visited sometimes, talking to women she'd never met, but understood completely. Tonight, she said, we're still here, we're still fighting, and we're winning. The wind moved through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and growing things. Rowan found her there an hour later. He didn't say anything, just stood beside her, solid and present. Do you think they're at peace? Anna asked. The ones who didn't make it. I don't know. I hope so. I think about them sometimes, about how easily I could have been here with them, under the ground instead of on top of it. But you're not. You survived, and you've helped dozens of others survive too. She leaned against him. Do you still miss them? Your family? Every day. But it's different now, softer, like they're part of me instead of a wound that won't heal. That's good. Yeah, it is. They walked back to the cabin together. Their cabin, their home. Inside, Anna lit a lamp and started preparing dinner. Rowan built up the fire. They moved around each other with the ease of people who'd learned each other's rhythms, who fit together despite, or maybe because of, all their broken edges. I was thinking, Anna said as she chopped vegetables. We should write down our story, what happened, how we got here, so people remember. Why? Because stories matter. They show people what's possible, that you can survive terrible things and still build a life worth living. Rowan considered this. All right, but you write it. You're better with words, so she did. Over the next year, in the evenings when work was done, Anna wrote everything down. The alley in Silver Bluff, the cabin, Judge Cross and the circle, the escape, the fire, the ledger. The slow rebuilding of two broken people into something stronger together than they'd been apart. She didn't romanticize it, didn't pretend it was anything but hard and painful and messy, but she also didn't shy away from the hope, the growth, the second chances that somehow, against all odds, had bloomed in the wilderness. When she finished, she showed it to Rowan. He read it in one sitting, by lamplight, while she pretended to be busy with other things. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. It's good, he said quietly. True. It's true. Is that okay? That I wrote it down? More than okay. People should know. Should know that even when everything is taken from you, your name, your past, your sense of self, you can still choose who you become next. They sent the manuscript to Martha, who had connections with publishers. 6 months later, a small printing house agreed to publish it. The book sold modestly at first, then more widely. Women read it and saw themselves. Men read it and understood, maybe for the first time, what their power could destroy. Some of those readers found their way to the compound. Some just to visit, to thank Anna and Rowan. Others stayed, adding their own broken pieces to the collection they were all assembling into something whole. 10 years after that night in the alley, Anna stood on the porch of the cabin, watching the sun rise over the mountains. She was older now, gray threading through her dark hair, lines around her eyes and mouth. Her hands were rough from work, her body marked by scars both old and new. But she was alive, fully, completely alive in a way she never could have imagined that first terrible night. Rowan came out, handed her coffee. His hair was almost entirely gray now, his movements a bit slower, but his eyes were clear, at peace in a way they hadn't been when she first met him. "Another group arriving today," he said. "Martha sent word. 3 women, 2 children. We'll make room." "We always do." They stood together, drinking coffee, watching the compound wake up. Smoke rising from chimneys, people emerging from buildings, starting their day. Voices calling greetings, children laughing as they ran toward the gardens. Life. Messy, complicated, beautiful life. "You know what I realized?" Anna said. "What?" "That night in Silver Bluff, when I couldn't remember my name, couldn't remember anything. I thought I'd lost everything, but maybe I hadn't lost anything. Maybe I'd been given a chance to start over, to become who I was always meant to be." Rowan put his arm around her. "And who's that?" Anna smiled. "Someone free." They stood on the porch as the sun climbed higher, warming the earth, promising another day. The garden stretched out before them, full of growing things. The bunkhouses held people learning to live again. The workshop rang with the sounds of creation. And in the cemetery on the hill, 12 markers stood silent witness to the cost of freedom, the price of survival. But here, in this place they'd built from nothing, there was also proof of something else, that broken people could heal, that the nameless could choose their own names, that from the ashes of violence and loss, something beautiful could grow. It wasn't a perfect ending. There was no such thing. People still struggled, still had nightmares, still carried scars that would never fully fade. But they were alive. They were together. They were free. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.